I just wanted to really celebrate, man. It's a big day yesterday,
It
right? 40
was, yeah,
years.
yeah. And it's funny because I've seen Exodus twice now on, they're doing Bonded by Blood, and
Yeah.
there was a really good article yesterday that Revolver Magazine put out about Combat Records. And
Hmm.
just kind of, I don't know,
Going back, right? Um, do you remember like the first session?
of recording. There was,
Yes.
there was only a couple sessions because it went by pretty quick. I mean, we moved into Indigo
Uh-huh.
Ranch recording studios, which was owned by the Moody Blues at the time, I think, and
Okay.
they so that was way up like a dirt road up into Malibu, way the hell up up in the hill, and so which just made it harder to get beer and food, and stuff.
Yeah.
In fact,
Yeah, the
I
studio
remember,
must have.
it was a different lifestyle, and I remember being a little gacked out, and walking into the to the studio, and Scarface was on TV, which scared the shit out of me. To be high on cocaine and watch Scarface
That's
is
okay.
not fun. You know what I mean? It's like, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that very clearly. That's when I
Right.
saw Scar. That'll scare you straight. You're like, oh shit, my life, I'm blowing it. Yeah,
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 woke you up.
totally. But basically we recorded all of those basic tracks. I mean, I think within a couple of days, man, because in those big studios back in that day, they were expensive. They were 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 a
Mhm.
day. You know, to have,
And that just comes
yeah,
out of you. It comes out of your
yeah,
advance,
exactly. And
right? Yeah.
our whole advance was 8 grand. And we had to live off that. And yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
That's
So I mean, I think
crazy.
we cut me, Dave, and Gar together. We cut, drums, bass, and guitar. Kind of one take. I mean, I remember doing an overdubs, like the little lick in Chosen Ones. I did like a little that do 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 do. Yeah,
I
I
love
mean, I
that.
punched that.
Like that was
Yeah, just to make it.
that was so that hit so crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, just to make it clean. And I remember, I think the lick and Skull Beneath the Skin, because I wanted to put
You
a
did that
chorus
too.
on it. And back in those days, now today, or you have a little money in your budget. It's like you never print an effect. You know what I mean? You record it and then you add the
Mhm.
effect later. You know what I mean? But back in that day, it's like stand there and then turn the chorus on. So you wanted those licks to be clean, and that's not uncommon in making records, but and then of course the intro, Last Rites. I remember, Dave was playing it on the piano. They had a grand piano there, so he sat down at the piano and played it, and I was standing there looking right over his shoulder. So as he was playing it, because we didn't play it to a click, and then I came in with a do
Mhm.
do do right.
Man, that album, as I said when we did our first interview, when we were on that tour bus, that album that was my first metal
Yeah,
album ever. Like that was the
yeah,
introduction to metal because I had
yeah,
someone
yeah.
older than me. Like he was like 6 years older than me. I thought he was cool as shit. He was playing the guitar. So like that was literally the first cassette I ever owned. I play it all the
Yeah.
time, man. And that intro was so different than other stuff that we heard, like like
Yeah, I mean,
with the piano and
that
everything.
era, that was, when we were starting the band. So, we lived on Sycamore Avenue, and that whole area right there was all like the students from MI, from Musicians Institute, right? So
Mhm.
we had a friend, Ingve was new in town. Mike Varney brought him over, so he was in Ron Keel's band Steeler. Loudness had just played their debut show at the Country Club, debut in America, and of course, Akira Takasaki was, amazing. So I mean, this was the era of great guitar
Mhm.
players. But our thing was more kind of Uli John Roth, those early Scorpions records, Virgin Killer, the Tokyo Tapes live, album of theirs. For sure, UFO Strangers in the Night. First couple Maiden records were out, but our ears were going more to this kind of almost neoclassical, this European type music. And Yngwie, of course, new in town, was just, he really brought that over big time. He was like the younger. He was like, if Uli John Roth had a kid, it would be Yngwie. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
yeah,
he was a beast. He was
yeah. So
definitely a beast.
he just brought, that whole thing. So so when I go to, to Last Rites, to go into this classical mindset that was big in I think the thrash genre, look, the Occult was big. Ronnie James Dio and Black Sabbath, of course, made that legal, to like, go down those roads. And then, and Venom, of course. And then also the neoclassical thing, so those are really, I think, two big influences into probably Killing and Peace Cells, quite honestly.
I mean, that album also aged very well to me. To me personally, I think that album aged really well. What, like, when you went into those breakdowns, and bass breakdowns, going back to what we were talking about before, like, how did that come into play? You were just like, basically, we need to just have a breakdown real quick just to come back in.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting as we were writing this stuff because Dave, was the main composer, so to speak, right? But a lot of those things, especially when Gar got in the band, once Gar, Dijon, our first drummer, was very creative. He was really into Cozy Powell and Ian Pace, so that was a big thing. And again, he wrote the Black Friday lyrics. It's that was really his concept. I mean, Dave finished it up in a way that made it singable, but I mean, the concept and the real beginning of those lyrics. I mean, because Dijon had that whole thing written out, so he was big into that. And then I think once Gar got in the band in 1984, he got in the band. See, we played our second round of shows in April of '84, and then Gar was in the band probably by May, May or something like that, May or June at the latest. We played a few shows as a 3-piece. We played like the Waters and Waters Club in San Pedro. We went back up to San Francisco. And did a round. I remember Death Angel opened for us, and that was, I think, like November 24th or something like that. And then right after that, we came home and went in the studio in December of '84 and started cutting records. So Chris Poland, I don't even know if he played any show. I don't think he played any shows with us yet. So he basically came in, and this would, ironically, this would kind of become a template. We basically, me, Dave, and whatever drummer would sort of be, writing and recording and putting the records, the songs, and then recording. And then, Chris pretty much played solos, and he played some rhythm stuff. You can really hear his rhythm guitar stuff, like on Rattlehead. Chris has got like perfect time. I mean, his meter is just fucking perfect, So in a lot of ways, he cleaned up our sound a little bit. He made, what was kind of, not to a click track, pretty rowdy, pretty off to the races tempos. Chris had a way of kind of reining it in a little bit and really putting a nice, meticulous musical point on stuff.
Hell yeah, man. That Rattlehead song goes so hard too. Like, and like, what was interesting with the songwriting in it, it's like at one point Dave's like, he's like, throw your fucking hands in the air, and like it sounds like it's like something like you would hear like on a party record, which was always interesting because if you think about it, it's kind of like hip hop, Yeah, like rattle. Yeah.
It's so funny. I was opening this up. I thought it was. I didn't know if it was a beer, and then I went to the gym today at the hotel, and it was water. So I'm like, okay, I guess I can drink it. I didn't know what the hell it was, but
yeah.
It's funny. So as it went, the first when I first met Dave, the song that became "Set the World Afire." It was called oh God, what the hell is it called? No Survivors. And the lyrics were done, the music was done. That song was done. And then he had Looking Down the Cross, which had a different title. Speak No Evil, I think was what the title was. Yeah.
Oh, really? That's what it was
Yeah, it
originally
was
supposed to
originally
be?
Speak No Evil. Yeah.
Wow.
And so, but then everything else, started to be written after that. So, I met him in June of '83. Then after that, as we would go to rehearsal, like, me and my friend Greg Handovit and Dave with Dijon. And Dave had a singer that he was kicking around with named Laura Kane. But, Laura wasn't a fit in there, he was kind of more like this Jim Morrison kind of guy, and he's a cool guy, but
Yeah, I heard
it
about
just
that.
there
Yeah.
wasn't a fit, so that kind of fizzled out pretty quickly, but he was there, as technically, I guess he would be a founding member of Megadeth as well, him and Dijon and Greg, as that
Yeah.
was the first, lineup that we were, rehearsing with and stuff. But then as we then like The Conjuring, for sure, Skull Beneath the Skin, and Devil's Island. So those were like the very earliest songs. And then as we continued to put the songs
Really?
together, throughout the remainder of '83, Jim Durkin from Dark Angel was at rehearsals with us, and Jim was real good. He was just a little young. He was a little green yet, because he was, yeah. Look,
Okay.
I was 18, so I was young, but I'd had bands in the Midwest, so I knew what I was doing. I knew how to play, and I'll do the thing, and go out and gig and do stuff. We ended up getting then Kerry King, to fill in.
Yeah, I heard
Yeah,
about
we got
that.
him to fill in.
He did like what, 4 gigs with
What's
you
that?
guys? Did he do like 4 gigs with you, Kerry King?
Yeah, I guess 5 actually. Yeah, because then turn the calendar into 1984. In fact, it was New Year's Eve. We auditioned a few singers, and this one guy was supposed to show up, and he didn't. And out of
Wow.
frustration, Dave just taped a sheet of lyrics for, I don't know, Chosen Ones or something, right? Put it up on a mic stand, and we played the song, and he stepped up to the mic and sang. And I was the one, I was like, dude, that was fucking killer. And he was like, all out of breath and turned it red like he's going to pass out. He just didn't really know how to sing and breathe and play, I don't think he'd ever done it before, And I said, killer, man. And he goes, really? I said, look, you're writing the lyrics. Like, no one's going to sing this shit as good as you
Yeah.
are, because you have the story. The thing about these Megadeth songs is they were stories, and that really, I learned a lot about that with songwriting, and as I would write lyrics, on upcoming albums and stuff too, is writing for Dave to sing them, because it was almost like Dave was writing not with him singing in mind, right? He was writing a story, and the storyteller was yet to be determined until New Year's Eve of '83, '84. When that singer didn't show up, Dave became the storyteller, So, and he just had the right attitude, he had the right conviction. So, then flip into '84. By February '84 is when we went up to the Bay Area to debut the band. And Kerry had just been up there with Slayer, like just a couple of months before that. So he'd been there with Slayer. The Exodus guys, of course, they were the gatekeepers. They were the ones that welcomed us all,
Yeah.
to the Bay Area, and so they were really great with that. And of course they knew Dave from his Metallica days, before that. So Dave had a lot of friends up there and supporters. We're excited to see what his new post Metallica band is going to be like. So, yeah, Kerry filled in on guitar. I never got the impression he was going to be a full-time member. I think he probably toyed with the idea a little bit, but I also think from those early days with Megadeth, he enjoyed it, he liked it, but I think he knew quickly, like, okay, Slayer is Slayer, I can do something with Slayer, like we've got a shot at something here. So he then, you know, when we came home, our drummer Lee Roush left the band. Kerry went back to Slayer, so it was just me and Dave, and then that's when we got Gar in the band. After that, we got introduced to this manager guy, Jay Jones, and then he brought in Gar. And then a couple of months later, he brought Chris in because Gar and Chris, it's kind of like me and Dave were.
They were going.
It was about bringing the two teams together, you know.
Yeah, that's what's so cool because you and Dave, like you guys were living above each other, right? That's how you guys met.
That's how we met. Yeah, that's how we met.
You and Dave.
On Sycamore Meat.
Yeah, and then those two were doing music already together.
Yeah, Gar and Chris grew up in Dunkirk, New York, so up by Buffalo, New York, and so they had moved to L.A. a few years earlier. They were, you know, they grew up on, you know, everything from Mahavishnu Orchestra and this, you know, Return to Forever, this kind of progressive jazz fusion stuff. And Gar, you know, Gar always cited Billy Cobham and Keith Moon as his influences, right? So, which is cool because, you know, Billy Cobham in that day was, he would be like the Mike Portnoy. He was the Neil Peart of the day, you know. He was of like the 70s or something, you know, of the kind of very progressive jazz rock. He was like the guy, you know. So, you know, so Gar, but then Gar also, you know, he's just unorthodox. You know, I think one of the things, you know, when Gar, Scoba to the Skin's a good example because when it comes to the breakdown after the intro, where he does the, you know, the floor tom roll, and then he does the fill this way, right? He comes up from the toms. Most people go right? Because if you're playing a beat, probably the closest drum is that first rack tom, right? So right? That's how most people kind of musically went from you know, a higher pitch to a lower pitch, like right? So, but Gar, you know, he would come from down below. Nobody did that. I mean, that was just so groundbreaking. Yeah. And even like Mechanics, you know, when we played Mechanics, you know, he plays a shuffle under that, you know, it's like Hot for Teacher. It's a shuffle, right? So think Hot for Teacher. Whereas, you know, obviously I liked the Metallica version from No Life Till Leather, as well as, of course, Four Horsemen, you know, where Lars, you know, plays a, you know, plays the riff basically on the drums, which super definitely cool, you know. But Gar's thing was this shuffle, and I played Ron McGovney's bass line, or at least my interpretation of it. You know, I kind of did my own stuff with it too. I played some of my own fills and licks, but I kind of was more to Ron McGovney's No Life Till Leather version of the bass line, you know, that I played on that.
When you guys recorded that album, so that did you like really like go hard with like referencing like the Four Horsemen before recording that? Because that came out before you recorded, correct?
No, so Dave wrote that song pre-Metallica, as I understand, according to how Dave. So he had Mechanics done in its entirety, and then he brought that into Metallica. You know, they kept certain riffs and parts of his songs, and you know, then you know created their version of it. Because you know, when you listen to the No Life Till Leather demo, you know, they play Mechanics in its entirety the way Megadeth did. I said the only real difference is, you know, Gar played the shuffle beat rather than, you know, Lars played the, you know, the actual, you know, the guitar riff basically on the drums. So both are great. I like both. But that, you know, two different styles. So Mechanics was very much Dave's song for sure, you know, and that's why when he said I want to do Mechanics, you know, he didn't look at it like it was a Metallica song. It was his song. So as I understand, this is from what David told me, you know, he brought that into Metallica. So when he left, he took it with him. You know, it was his attitude, you know. I think those other songs, I believe, you know, he collaborated, or if he brought them into the Metallica band room, they worked on those together. Metal Militia, Phantom Lord, whatever stuff that he wrote. I got the impression that those were group compositions, whereas Mechanics was entirely his song, lyrics and music that he brought into Metallica, and then obviously took with him into.
No, I mean the whole structure of the song is exactly the same. It's just slowed down, and then they bring in like like Dave says, the Sweet Home Alabama kind of sounding riff that they
yeah,
they put in the song.
He told me Lars wanted something like a Sweet Home, like a Leonard Skinner part there, right? So Dave wrote that kind of as a joke. I think he said, I don't know, he kind of played something, and he said, yeah, like that, and they kept that. So, it's ironic. I don't know in the history of music if there is, ever a song. Let's just take Mechanics, right? That is essentially Mechanics is the song. Four Horsemen is a derivative of that song, as they collaborated even while Dave was in the band to develop it into the Four Horsemen. So there's essentially these two songs that are two different names, two different lyrics, but musically the same, two different copyrights, right?
Yeah.
And, the melodies are the same. Obviously, James changed the lyrics, to the Four Horsemen, wrote an entirely different story to it.
But the melody is exactly the same. The way that James is going on the song, the way he's delivering his vocals, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun,
So
dun, dun,
it's
dun,
funny that,
you know
what I mean? It's in the divorce, if you will, it's like they both kind of have, the same house, but just with a different doorway on it. You know what I mean? So it's, I don't know in the history of recorded music if that's ever happened before.
Nah, I mean, I've never seen it.
It's not like
it's wild, and it's cool that
Iron Maiden has Wrathchild, and then Paul Di'Anno went off and did a different version. You know what I mean? It's like it's just never happened. It's kind of strange actually now that we're talking about it that it happened. So of course that controversy continues to this day, as we've seen recently.
I know. We just seen. I'm sure you heard about somewhat of that new interview with Dave. He mentioned that again and everything like that with Lars, with that riff.
I mean, listen,
from the Sweet Home Alabama.
Look, it's kind of like when you work for a company. Like for instance, when I worked for Peavey, we did a David Ellefson signature bass, right? But when I left, they took my name off of it. They keep the bass, right? Because it was it's Hartley Peavey's company. I worked for him. It was and I think in Metallica it's the same thing. It's Lars and James's band, and so if you're there and you write some songs, what you did there stays there. You know what I mean? So I can see that. Yeah. I mean, this was all before I even met Dave. I met Dave 6 weeks after he was out of Metallica, and for me, No Life to Leather was my first introduction to them, and I loved what I heard. Yet I liked as good, I think as good for sure, what Dave was writing. I was going, fuck, dude, No Survivors, Speak No Evil, Devil's Island, I think, had a working title of "Don't Get Mad, Get Even" or something like that. That's right. So, you know what I mean. So it's like when I heard him, we're sitting there in the apartment and he's playing those songs. I'm going, "What are you complaining about?" It's like these songs are great. Like these are even better than what you were doing in Metallica, and it's like it just went to the next level, and. I just, me, again, Forest from the Trees, it wasn't my, argument to have with that. But I just looked at it and went, man, the fact that this band, kicked you out, okay, bummer. But, they used your songs. They put your name on on the credit, and you got paid. It's like, fuck, that's like a triple win, man. You know what I mean? So, you know,
yeah.
So,
100%.
yeah. So, you know, but look, when members got kicked out of Megadeth, you know, no one was ever, their songs weren't used and credited and paid. You know what I mean? It was like, you know, I mean, the song "Soldier On" the last Megadeth record, I brought the lyric and the melody in for that, and then me and Dave were working on that together. He changed the title of it to "Soldier On," and then when he kicked me out, he just took my words off and kept the whole song to himself and took all the credit. He didn't pay me or put my fucking name on it. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Lars and James were pretty generous to him, you know. So
you'll take that ticket.
I look at that, I'm just like, yeah, that didn't happen to any of us in Megadeth. So it's like, you know. So anyway, but you know, whatever. It's all part of the folklore and the legend of Megadeth and Metallica, I guess, at this point.
Yeah, and it's gonna last forever, right? Till the wheels fall off, which will never happen.
What it is, man. So,
yeah, that will never fall
exactly.
off.
So yeah, most people, yeah. So again, most people, you know, maybe get a severance. Hey, I look at it like that. It was a severance package, you know. They you know, Metallica didn't have any money. They were broke, you know. They'd signed, you know, they signed the deal. They made the record. Who knew if they'd make any money at all? The fact that it blew up like it did was just incredible. But yeah, it's you know, it's the feud of our genre, you know.
Battle of the Bands. Because it was kind of like that going in there, right? When he got kicked out and he formed his own band and like trying to just like take over the world. That's what I got. Like,
and I mean, look, you know, when me and Greg Handabit met Dave asking for, you know, where do we buy beer, and so just trying to meet our neighbor. Like, all right, we got to meet some neighbors. We don't know anybody in town. We're only 18. We're too young to buy beer. The drinking age was 21. So like, how are we going to make this work? And, you know, Dave was the first knock on the door, you know, and you know, the fact that, you know, look, it really, Greg was the one who suggested we call the band Megadeth. You know, Dave didn't even like the name. You know, he didn't even want to call it that. Greg's like telling you that's the name. And even Laura Kane was like, whoa, dude, Megadeth, fuck, that's heavy, dude. You know, like, you know, I'll never forget Greg, because we were sitting, I think, downstairs in our apartment. It was after rehearsal, and Dijon had a girlfriend, so he was off with his girlfriend. But it was me, Dave, Laura, and Greg, and we were at our apartment. And you know, Greg kind of slouched down on the couch, and we're sitting there just talking about the stage and, you know, what the stage is going to look like. Because, you know, we were formulating all this stuff, right? Like what's the stage going to look like? And, you know, how are we going to have two Daves in the band? You know, my name is Warren. Should we just call me War instead of, you know, Dave? How did we get to have two Daves? Because Dave was already Dave. So then we decided, all right, I'll be David, you know, and we kept our real names.
Yeah, you were definitely David.
Like, yeah, like we kept our real names. You know, we didn't do stage names, you know, like, you know, it's like Gene Simmons, Paul Stanley. These are like fucking cool names, you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, when you get, and I was like, I love Dave. Is Ellefson cool? I don't know. That's not like a cool rock and roll name. You know, I mean, I'm glad I kept it now, of course, but you know what I mean? It's like, you know, Nikki Sixx, you know, because that was what was going on the Sunset Strip. You know, everybody had they had stage names, you know, so.
Like one syllable names.
Nick Mars, Nikki Sixx. These are like total fucking rock star names, you know. And so, you know, we kept our names, and then the next topic was, you know, we need a band name, and that's, I'll never forget Greg, because he kind of had this sly look. He's kind of looking at me, well, I think we should call the band Megadeth. And there was like this silence in the room, and then that's when Laura goes, whoa, dude, Megadeth, fuck, that's heavy. Because Megadeth was the word in the song No Survivors, right? The Arsenals of Megadeth can't be rid, they said. You know, that was the line, right? And when we saw those lyrics, you know, that's, I mean, it's fucking brilliant, right? That, you know, what's a Megadeth? You don't even know what the word is, you know what I mean? So it stuck, and you know, Greg forced the issue, you know, and then you know, I remember Dave, he didn't want to have the word death. He didn't like the name. He didn't like the word death. Like that was just too cliche for a metal band, right? So Greg was the one who suggested. He goes, well, "Why don't we drop the A? You know, Megadeth. You know." And then Dave liked it because it's 8 letters, it's numerology, it's the perfect 8, like the infinity, right? It's the eight, the eight's.
Oh wow! Oh, so he's using mathematics for this whole thing with the name. I never knew that. That's fire.
Like the gematria stuff, right? Where you have what letters.
I never knew.
Yeah, so there was a lot of thought into it. I mean, it didn't just, we were not a band that just jammed and smoked pot and.
Nah, you guys were very intricate with everything. Like, it was really cool. What about the artwork? Because I remember, weren't you guys really unhappy with that artwork? Or
Well, and I've learned now too from my friend Mike Schnapp, who did radio promotion for Combat Records. I've just befriended him again. We've stayed in touch and stuff, but he's working on a movie, he's working on a book and stuff. So I was just with him in New Jersey for the Nick Menza film premiere, and he just told me the other day there were 2 masters, when you went in and mastered, you take that, like we would take the Delz. So we did those couple of days up in Indigo Ranch. Then we moved down to a studio called Crystal Sound Labs down in Santa Monica and Gower, where we finished the rest of the recording, the solos. Chris did his solos and stuff there, and the rest of the singing, and then we mixed there. And then we went to go have it mastered, and I think we went to a place, I can't remember. I forgot where it was. Anyway, we went to, and so when you mastered, basically what you're doing is you're creating the lacquer that that becomes the thing by which you press and manufacture all the vinyl, right? And of course made cassettes from at that point too. But essentially you're creating, it's literally a turntable with a needle, and it's carving, the master, vinyl template that you're going to then create, send out to the factory. Right. And then from which they literally press and manufacture all the vinyl. And so I remember, me and Dave going there. Chris may have been there with us as well, because Chris was an audiophile. He liked to be into the mixing, and he wanted to be there for as much of it as he could too. And so there's one master, and so when you master, you have to have your songs in order, because they basically that's where they cut. The mastering engineer also trims the fades and the stop of a song to the start of the new song, right? And there's a formula that they had for, like, you put 3 seconds in between songs. And I will say this: the mastering guys loved our records because they only had 8 songs on them, right? There was only, like, I think 28 or 32 minutes of material, right? So if it was 4 songs on side A, 4 songs on side B, because what the mastering guy said, he goes, less songs means the grooves are wider, which means more bottom end. Of course, win for me, of course. But so then we did that, and then when we sent that off to Combat, Steve Sinclair, who was kind of the point man, A&R guy at the label, he went in and created his own master and changed the order. And I literally just learned this like a couple weeks ago, and then I got to thinking about it, and I'm going, you know what, because it's so funny. Like in Kings of Thrash, we're learning the record top to bottom, and in my mind, I always felt like there was a different order to the record, and the guys would be like, "No, this is what it is." I'm like, that can't be right. Because I never, I don't sit around and listen to Killing Is My Business, right? I just don't. And
you don't listen to
and obviously it was 4 years ago we made it, right? So and so when Mike told me that, I'm like, I knew it. I fucking knew it, because I knew there's no way we would have, as a band, put the songs in that order. So isn't that funny that there's literally these 2 masters, and who knows? Like he called it, there was the Dave master and then the Steve Sinclair master, and the Steve is the one that, he worked at the label, he ran the label, his master won, right? So then you come to the artwork, same thing, right? They send us the finished version. They don't send us like, hey, here's a sample, Yeah, like, you know,
draft.
any label now would say, email you a PDF. Hey, this is with a sketch of how it's coming along. And you go, yeah, and add a little more orange, or can we tweak the lyric? You know, just tweak the logo. There's none of that. They just fucking send you. So we go. We had a friend that, you know, because me and Dave didn't have like a mailbox, we didn't have a permanent address because we were pretty much homeless, just living with people, right? So I remember going over to her house, Sharon, and they shipped it to her, and so we go to her. I think they sent it to her or our post office, but I thought they sent it to her, and there it is. We're like, holy shit, that's not at all what we wanted. They changed the logo, so the version you see now on the Final Kill, and even the one that we reissued back in 2002, that remix, that is obviously it's got the current logo, but it's you know, the skull and crossbones, that was what it was supposed to look like, because it was essentially, that was the description of the skull beneath the skin, and it was also the see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, which is looking down the cross. So that was the whole description. Yeah. Now, if you really want to see the original artwork, look on the Megadeth anthology Greatest Hits album cover. Dave has a white shirt on. That's one of our shows. I think that was from Palo Alto. It was our first, I think it was our first round of shows we did up there with Kerry King in February of '84. And Dave only had his one guitar, his BC Rich, the Rich Bitch, right, that he had from Metallica. He only had that one guitar, and he broke a string, so he had to borrow. Kerry had two. He had the red Mockingbird, and then he also had I think he had a Warlock, a black Warlock. So Dave, Kerry must have been playing the Warlock, so Dave quickly grabbed Kerry's red Mockingbird. And so that picture on the front of Anthology is Dave with Kerry's Mockingbird. And that T-shirt, that is the original artwork that we sent them, right? That was
really?
That's the Megadeth logo. This kind of, you know, sort of, you know, how the sort of the logo spread out, and then those sickles that come down, and then the skull and crossbones, the you know, sort of the origin story of what became Vic Rattlehead. So that's it. That's the original artwork on that T-shirt, and that would have been from 1994.
That's a trip, man. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm still blown away by what you told me about the labels doing the switcherooski last minute, you know, and rearranging the order. That's just what labels do. Right? The A&Rs.
They did whatever the hell they wanted. They did whatever the hell they wanted, man. It's. I remember we played at the Ritz. I think it was Slayer, Megadeth, and the Bad Brains. And we played at the Ritz in New York, and Steve Sinclair was in the audience, and Dave, he was a little hammered, and he was fucking going off, yelling at Steve. He's sitting like right in front of him, and going off, you know, bitching about Combat while Combat was in the audience, you know. And then I remember then they put in this brand new $20,000 video screen, and they lowered the screen like, okay, you guys are done, right? And I remember Dave took his guitar and smashed it through the screen. And yeah, our agent Andy Summers somehow got us out of having to pay for that, because that would have been expensive.
Yeah, that would have been pricey.
Yeah, more money than we had.
Early days, you didn't have the bread back then, right? Like you know, that would have hurt a little bit.
Yeah,
because you guys were wild when you were younger, though, man. You guys were wild.
It was a real rock. We were the Sex Pistols, man. I mean, it was full on. With like just anyone could have died, or anything could have happened at any time. You know, full on fights, and you know, it's like it's what it was.
Dave had to be a front man, though. He was born to be a front man.
He was, and he was, and again, you know, Gary Holt talked about that. I remember seeing that somewhere where he said when they would go see Metallica, they would mostly go just to see Dave, because he'd rave and rant and talk, because he talked in between the songs, you know. So he was like, you know, James was the singer, but Dave was kind of the front man. You know what I mean? So it was an interesting dynamic, but obviously that wasn't meant to last, you know. So yeah, I agree. It's you know, and I think yet, you know, there were times where Dave probably would have loved to have just been the guitar player. It would have been a lot more fun, a lot easier to just just be the lead guitar player, you know, and not have to sing all the time. Because when you're singing, you're tied to the mic. You've got to do all of that, you know. So, but yeah, no, you're right. His personality was definitely. I knew that as soon as I met him. It was like, okay, this guy's like a David Lee Roth, like a metal version of David Lee Roth. Like he's just meant to be the front man, you know, for sure.
The like it was almost like wrestling promos at times during between songs when you guys first would start. Like some of the shit he would talk, it was incredible, you know.
Yeah. We had a few drinks. It was an interesting night.
Man.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm glad that you came through, man. Because as I said, it's a special album. It's a historic album, one of the best, and a very important album when it comes down to thrash metal history. I'm happy that you came through, man. And what's going on right now? You probably, I know, like last year or the year before when I spoke to you, you had like a ton of projects. Are you taking it slowing down a little, or are you going crazy again?
It's funny. I don't have any projects. I have bands. You know, when you start something, and I guess maybe because I was in one band for so long, you know, but then when you do something different, it's kind of it's a new project, and it's. I mean, look, Megadeth was a project until we decided, okay, this is going to work. You know what I mean? I mean, I think everything you start is ultimately a project. You know, because think about when you got sent home from science class and you had to build a volcano. It was a project, right? You go home and it's a lot of work, right? You put it together and it's like, oh fuck, the volcano works. So that's fun, And that's what writing songs is like. That's what putting a band together is like. It's like science class, you know what I mean? You're building something from the ground up, and when it starts to work, and it's trial and error. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. We got to tweak this, tweak that, so I guess they all start like that. But I've ever since I was a kid, ever since I first got my first bass, by age 12, I was putting bands together, and I joined a couple bands, but for the most part, I was always the guy putting them together, and I like that. That's even Megadeth, right? I came to California and Dave didn't have a band. He was writing some songs. He needed some soldiers at the very least, which, and again, Greg, my friend Greg really, and I give him the kudos and the credit because he was such a big part of kind of the, carving a path. I mean, he's a true metalhead at heart, and he really he saw a vision for Dave's songs that he was writing. And that's pretty cool because Dave was not very receptive to people having any other ideas than him. You know what I mean? So, for Dave to even be at all receptive to that, and Greg was pretty forceful. He had a way of, a conviction about him. And so it was good. It was a good thing, obviously. So it was short lived. It wasn't going to last. But back to your question, I mean, right now I'm in Gdynia, Poland. I'm looking out over the Baltic Sea right here with Russia right over there and Denmark and Sweden to the north. And I'm just literally here. We did rehearsals for with Dieth. We're playing a festival tomorrow, a couple hours south of here. And then after that, a couple weeks, and then I'll be up with the Farewell Black Sabbath Ozzy Osbourne show up in Birmingham. July 5th.
Incredible.
Yeah. And then Dieth, we have another show in Toronto August 1st. And then after that, Chris Poland and I are I'm going to do a bass story event. I haven't done a bass story now in about 5-6 years. So we're going to do a one-off bass story show that I'm going to have Chris Poland be a part of. And then he and I are appearing at Terrificon, which is a Comic-Con event at Mohegan Sun in Connecticut. So, yeah, then then Kings of Thrash will be September and October, and then I'm doing the Alice Cooper, Rob Halford Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp in Phoenix in November. So yeah, the year's it's got fun stuff going on, So
what's going on with man? I'm sorry, I'm having like a brain freeze. My guy from Sponge. You guys have
the Lucid, yeah.
Yes, thank you, the Lucid.
Yeah, it's there's always an album in the works with that. We became, we wanted to do some shows. In fact, we had shows booked on the calendar, and then our guitar player Drew 48, he had a cancer scare Fortunately, he was able to have a surgery, and it was good. It was benign. It wasn't so. Fortunately, he dodged a bullet with that. But then that pulled everything off the books, and so we kind of just became like a really famous internet band. You know what I mean? We put some records out. I think that the material's fantastic. You know, it was fun for me. Not like everything that I do is. If I was thinking about it today, even with Diet, because like, you know, we're actually rehearsing a couple of Entombed songs, you know, and it's funny, Entombed was kind of like Megadeth for death metal. You know, the music's complex. It's got a lot of intricacy to it. You know, they had that kind of same following too. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, coming out of Sweden, of course, they're very popular around here. And our drummer Mihal's, you know, from Decapitated, and Hubert, our the guitar player. So I mean, these guys are in the real death metal scene the way I was, you know. So it's interesting for me, being a little bit older, to learn how they wrote, how they played, you know. So that's an interesting thing. So it's interesting, you know, that scratches an itch. Obviously, Kings of Thrash, we go out, we play Killing Is My Business. Like, it's like in its entirety, like no problem.
And you guys are doing more now, aren't you?
Yeah, we are. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, we're gonna, you know, it's funny, when we did our tour in the UK and Europe back in October, November. November 1st was the anniversary of Euthanasia. So I said, look, let's dig a couple tunes out and throw a little nod to that. So we're gonna continue that. And then we're gonna definitely go back and I mean, we have the whole Killing Is My Business record in our set list because we have played that.
Yeah, it's incredible. If you guys haven't seen this and they're in your city, you got to go. It's so much effing fun. First of all, too, like just hearing these old songs with like 2025, you know, like the sound of 2025, the equipment. It's just so much power. Sounds really good.
Yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, Kings is a great lineup, man. Fred on drums and Chaz, our singer. I mean, Chaz, you couldn't find a better singer and frontman for that. I mean, he just fundamentally, naturally gets the charisma and persona of Dave. You know, he's a really cool, nice guy too, which makes.
Oh yeah, I've been talking with him. Yeah, he's really cool.
He's super cool. And again, he's a big fan, so. For him, it's just all respect, and you know, for him to do it, and that's why we started that band, was to go out and play these songs, because I had done, you know, the Chiller Theater events back in 2021, I guess it was, and it was my, you know, first couple of months I wasn't in Megadeth, and Megadeth had just gone through the area, and fans are complaining. They're like, "What the fuck? There's like the same 10 songs, and we want to hear old stuff," and they're giving me my Killing Is My Business songs to play, and that was when it hit me. I went home, I called Chris Pohl, and I go, dude, we got to go out and fucking play some of this early stuff, man. The fans are wanting to hear this stuff. It's just not how, you know, the current version of Megadeth is, and it's, you know, that's just what it is. You know what I mean? So I said, look, we can go out and play this shit. It'd be fun, you know, and we don't, you know, we're not trying to go play stadiums. It's like, just go and play it. You know, these songs were written and played in 500-seat clubs. It sound good there, you know. So
there were pits in there. It was fun. It was like, you know, like taking it back to the roots, you know. When it was, it was sick. I have to say something too, because I ran into Violent J from ICP, and he's like, I need to do more metal. He said, when you talk to or see David next, I want to start a band with him. Tell him to call me, email me. He was. I mean, he was like, because I interviewed him, and I mentioned about when I seen him maybe like 2 weeks after I interviewed you on the tour bus, and he was like, bro, it's a dream of mine to be in a band. He's like, a dream.
No, he's cool, man. Well, you know, Drew got him in, well, actually it was Vinny, because they're both Michigan guys. So Vinny was in Michigan, Vin Dombrowski from Sponge and the Lucid, right? So that's how that happened. So they're buddies, and so yeah, you know, and you know, with the Lucid, that is that band of just weird, odd bits of people that you wouldn't think would fit together, and yet they do. I mean, you know, you get the Bang Tango guitar player with the Lucid singer, the Fear Factory drummer, and the bass from Megadeth. It's like, the fuck is that going to sound like? And it doesn't sound like any of those bands, you know. That, I think, is probably the coolest thing about that group is we really found our own sound, you know, and then when you add, you know, Violent J in there for a couple of guests,
yeah, that was the one
know,
with that. It was almost like a sample you guys did. I mean, you replayed it. I don't mean to interrupt you, pardon me, but didn't you guys do like the Faith No More
yeah,
kind of vibe?
yeah. Tell you what, that
Yeah,
was fun because you know Mike Heller, our drummer, is a fantastic producer, and you know, so you know, working with him is great. He's a killer drummer, and so you know to play to really deep dive. And I love Billy Gould's bass part, man. He is such a great bass player. The Faith No More, especially that one record that was really popular that had that song on it in particular. You know, that was a real that record turned some heads and really made an impact. You know, Faith No More they were the right band at the right time in the musical landscape, you know, because Jim had this metal sound to his guitar playing. Billy was this funk kind of thing because funk metal was kind of a deal there for a minute, you know. And then Mike Patton, of course, you know, was just such a great, you know, great singer and stuff. So they were kind of a cool band of misfits, you know what I mean? And yet they too, when they all came together, they had this really captivating sound, you know, and you know, so yeah, so it was fun to record that because I really wanted to play it exactly like Billy did, you know, as best I could because I'm such a fan of his bass playing, you know. Yeah, I love it. It's part
got such a groove and bounce to it, you know, and it's heavy.
Him and Mike Gordon, man, what a rhythm section, you know.
Yeah. So you were mentioning about Ozzy, right? Ozzy's last show is around the corner. Do you have a fond memory you'd like to share with the people before we go, just to celebrate Ozzy's career?
You know, when we did the Megadeth Black Sabbath tour in 2014 in South America, you know, me and Ozzy and Billy Morrison, he was down there, Billy was down there as well, and that's when I got to know Billy. And so the three of us would hang out, and you know, on show days, they invited me over to their, you know, their camp, and you know, it was fun. You know, it was cool. There was you know, a lot of conversations about music and, you know, clean living. You know, we're kind of the clean living guys. You know what I mean? So it's you know, Ozzy was, you know, he's very sharp, man. He's very smart. He's obviously got a lot of experience, and he was just like hanging out with like a cool music guy. You know, that to me was, I think, the thing that I really took away from that, you know. And you know, he was like all of us, you know, no matter how famous you are and all that kind of stuff. It's like you realize that, you know, we're all just musicians, you know, and sometimes when you just hang out with people like that, it sort of demystifies it, you know, and then you realize it's like, man, we're all, you know, like I've said many times, we're all in the same band. You know what I mean? Like we're all just, you know, music buddies and you know, so it was just cool to, you know, Metallica did that when we did the Big Four. Before we played a note together the night before the first show in Warsaw, we had a dinner. They set up a dinner with all the bands, no representatives, no managers, no security guards, just the four bands get together, break bread, have dinner, go around the tables, hang out. You know, hey, how's the kids? How's the wife? You know, what kind of car you got in the garage? What have you been up to? Haven't seen you in a few years. You know what I mean? Just have those conversations. And that was, you know, and like I think Lars said, he goes, you know, what happens is usually, you know, you'd start doing shows, you're together on a tour, a bunch of dates, and then finally at the end, you go, you know, you finally take the group picture, you come in and you know, you have a few minutes and you go, these guys were so cool. Why didn't we hang out the whole tour? You know, so I thought that was great wisdom on their part to let's have that conversation first before we even play a note together, you know, and let's be brothers first, and then we'll play the show tomorrow, you know. And so I felt like, you know, Billy Morrison inviting me over there to hang with him and Ozzy, you know, he did that. I felt like there was like a brotherhood, you know, and I already knew Geezer. And so so it was great. And then I'd see Geezer and Tony in the hall, and it would be like, hey, what's going on? You know? And so I felt like I got included into their family, you know, and because we were the clean living brothers. You know what I mean? We weren't the troublemakers. You know what I mean? So it's like it was good. You're on the right side of that. So so
maybe it's a bassist thing. The bassist people they tend to stay out of the trouble.
Yeah, well, and what was nice too is that then Billy Morrison, I got, during COVID, I did that Ellefson No Cover record, and so I hit up Al Jorgensen's camp. I wanted Al to participate, he agreed to sing on Auf Wiedersehen because he's friends with the Cheap Trick guys from the Chicago days. So he sang on Auf Wiedersehen, and it was look, Al will throw one to you, you throw one to him, right? So we're at Al's house there in LA at his studio, and we're shooting the Auf Wiedersehen video and everything, which was super cool. And then within the year, maybe a year later, I got the call to go out and write and record with Al for that Moral Hygiene record. So, and I walk in the studio and Billy Morrison's there. I'm like, hey, fuck, I haven't seen you in a couple of years. And he is a fantastic guitar player. I mean, I just knew him as as a brother on the road, and then, guitars in hand. I was like, man, this guy's like musically lights are on. This guy's really engaged. And so we wrote a song, and it was his idea. We were standing out by the pool after we wrote. It was interesting because Al had a Pro Tools guy in there, and he would just turn on and hit record, and everything we wrote, we were just writing riffs. He captured all of it, and Al was sitting in the room, just kind of kicking back, grooving, going, yeah, that's cool, I like that. And he just kind of left us alone to just write, and his guitar player Caesar was there as well. And then we went out by the pool and we're hanging out, and that's when Billy Morrison said to Al, he goes, we should really do, is it Seek and Destroy, the Iggy Pop song? Am I saying that? Is that the right? I remember it wasn't exactly like the Metallica one, but and so we ended up covering that. We ended up covering that song, and Billy put the whole track together. He put the whole groove together. Then he sent it to me, and I played bass on it out in Arizona. So yeah, it was great to, have a collaboration with him. So it's funny how doors open to different shit. So very cool.
Yeah, that's one thing I respect and I love about what you do, man. Because your career, you've not been scared to try new things, experiment, and just branch out and just do what you love and play music. It's really cool that you do all of that. Yeah. Friday the 13th, we're gonna end it like this because it's Friday the 13th, right? So let's say they wanted to pick a song off of "Killing Is My Business" for the movie. What song would you want to be in that movie? A new Friday the 13th.
A new Friday the 13th?
If they were doing a new Friday the 13th, which song off this album? Since we're celebrating 40 years.
Well, look, I think for one of the scary, haunting pieces, you'd have to start with Last Rites, right? Because just that piano intro sets up a good killing scene pretty well, right? Some scary's got it. Right?
Yeah, the cross. That's a band. The way that bass comes
on the cross is like crazy. Would be in there, and I think also probably, you could probably even put, you could clip a little piece of Skull Beneath the Skin in there somewhere. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the beginning. Like the beginning sounds very haunting. Like something very bad and dangerous is going to happen next.
So, 100%. It was an eerie effing album. It had some eerie ass. It was eerie as hell. Like Looking Down the Cross was very eerie too. I thought that's pretty.
Yeah, Looking Down the Cross. Because a lot of it's all this, and look, Sabbath kind of started it, right? Black Sabbath. They did these sort of right, this diminished, right? That's like a spooky. It's like a Boris Karloff. Right. That yeah, it's this diminished kind of triad thing, and harmonic minor are some of the kind of formal music talk there, but you start using those, and and that's what we did, and that's what made it not. Whereas Maiden was minor keys, mostly pentatonic kind of stuff. When you take a pentatonic and you flat like the fifth, then it becomes that diminished thing. And I mean, a perfect example, probably the best example of that diminished thing, is that beginning of Dave's solo in Mechanics. That do 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 do. That's all. I don't have a guitar here in the room, but it's all. That is a classic. Just that's all diminished stuff, right? And that sound, and that's why, like, the Skull Beneath the Skin, right? That intro, it's all these chromatic that F E right? Those movements, again, it goes back to this kind of neoclassical diminished. They called it the Devil's Tritone. Diminished is it's like a 1 flat 5 octave, right? So they called it the Devil's Tritone, and people
the shape or something like that. Is like that.
Actually, you could be executed for playing it back in a different day, right? Yeah, back in the days of the witches and stuff, right? So
yeah.
And Paganini was another guy that was the violinist Paganini. He was like the Yngwie of his day, on violin, and so these were the inspirations of a lot of those songs, the musical inspiration for those songs.
Yeah, I mean, it's once again, I'm glad that you came through. I wanted to celebrate. This is such a historic album. It had to be talked about today, or yesterday, or today. It has to be.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you being here, and man, just besides it being so eerie, it's also got one of the most gangsta effing songs ever. We talked about that last time. That the actual title track, like a hitman going to take someone out, like that, like. That's so gangster right there. Like,
yeah. No, it's pretty. That, and same with Love to Death, right? You know what I mean? And especially that last line. The protagonist, dies, goes to hell, thinking that his girlfriend's going to be puritanical, and then what do I see? You're down here, you're down here in hell with me. You know what I mean? So it just that funny. They always called it tongue in cheek, which
yes,
I guess it is, but it I guess that's the literary term for it, But to me, there were always these, kind of flip the script kind of lyric writing where you don't know where the story's going. It's suspenseful, very cinematic. You know what I mean? And then all of a sudden at the end, the flip script, like you said, killing is my business. My next shot is you, so it's, that and Love to Death are two like that, where you don't expect that to be the ending of the story. They're funny,
Yeah, no, it's just, as I said, it aged well. And I love listening to it as I've gotten older, because I would listen to it when I was so young. I didn't know half the stuff I didn't really get like I do as I got older, so it grew with me, excuse me. Like, I'm like, oh, that's what that shit means. I was saying, a great album though, man. Congrats, 40 years, man. Hopefully we can see you guys together again. I miss the two of you guys together.
Yeah, I know. Look, I miss Dave. I miss Dave too. Look, some of my favorite, some of the best stories of my life begin with. Then there was the time me and Dave fill in the blank. You know what I mean? Because we lived such a interesting life, together. It was just, with that band. So, we haven't talked in a few years, but, I miss the guy, of course. We had a lot of fun. And look, anytime we've ever had these gaps like this, as soon as we get back together, we just, it's like we just were hanging out yesterday, So, I mean,
we got to get these guys back together. If you're watching this, put in the comments, we need Dave and David back together. Let's put it into existence. We need to see you two back on stage, man. We're going to put all the information in the description box below. Make sure to follow everything he's doing. He's going to be in a city near you. It's a matter of time, maybe even tomorrow. So go check it out. And thank you, as always, bro. Anything else you'd like to say before we go?
No, that's it, man. I was just digging on your scary monster behind you there.
Yeah, man. So we got him right there. That's Frankie, man. That's Frankie.
Nice.
We named him Frankie right there. And I got some artwork here. These are from Charlie Bonanta. He did those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, man. Oh yeah, you seen Metallica? Because I just seen Charlie like a week and a half ago. You caught the Metallica show, the new one, right? The new tour.
I did. Yep. I saw him in Munich last year, and then it was on my birthday. Ironically, it's funny because Drew's filming a new movie, and he had me do a. You'll like it. It's a gangster part, right? So I truly had to act because it's not my normal character, so it was fun. So Drew's great with this. Drew brings me into all this stuff, and he's really into. He and his girlfriend Hannah are really, they're big movie buffs, and she's an actress and a director as well. So they've been making a lot of movies and stuff. So you were asking about the Lucid. That's one of the, he's been writing some Lucid stuff with Vin, but also making some movies. So while I was back in Detroit, it was literally my birthday, my 59th birthday back in what was that, 23? Yeah, 2023. So I went over, and yeah, they were. It was great, man. It was super fun weekend hanging out with those guys.
Yeah, I seen it on your Instagram. I was like, oh, I think you had a picture with Lars or something.
Yeah. It's fun. We basically hung out and closed the venue down. You know what I mean? So and he's another guy, just like the old days. It's like no, when we were young and rowdy, and he'd come to our shows, and we'd all get fucking hammered and hang out in trash hotel, that stuff. So you know what I mean? It's just it's. I mean, we don't do that anymore, but it's fun, And even the other day I saw Gary Holt. I went and saw Exit. I saw him twice. I saw him in Phoenix, and then they were playing a couple nights ago in Frankfurt as I was passing through on my way here to Poland, and so popped in to see. And it's so great, seeing that show twice, literally in the last month. That show, and it was great to see them. They play so good. Exodus sounds so good. I mean, they've always been a great band, but they were always kind of fun and rowdy, and now they're real tight. The show sounds expensive, is how I put it. Like which means it's audio at its best. It looks great. Jack's a great. Yeah, it's great, man. So Gary's just I mean, look, if most of us, that which didn't kill us only got us sobered up and cleaned up, and so the Exodus guys are totally on point, and so yeah, it's and that's why, again, Bonded by Blood 40th anniversary, Killing Is My Business 40th anniversary. Again, this is the house that built the House of Combat.
Yeah, it's Combat versus Megaforce Records, basically, in the beginning. That's what it was.
Pretty much. It's funny, when I saw that Revolver magazine piece and they went down, because that, Nuclear Assault, Game Over, I love that record, man. That's so fucking good. And quite honestly, like Kings of Thrash, we just put out that song Lockdown. And that's what I said to Jeff.
Excuse me, we got to promote that too.
Yeah, I said that because Jeff, we'd written some songs. And, the thing with writing with a singer is to write in their range and something that's them. And Jeff said, he goes, look, why don't we just write stuff around Chaz's voice? I said, yeah, that's a good idea, So I said to Chaz, I said, dude, go write us a couple tunes. You are the fucking heart of thrash metal. You really get it. You understand it. And I said, let's see what you bring to the table as far as a writer. So far you've basically been singing Megadeth songs, So he brought a couple songs, and I liked Lockdown. I thought it was cool. The lyric, I think people kind of miss the lyric. It's like, what's going on? I'm not in America today, but what's in America right now? I mean, fuck. I mean, the lockdown, he even said, he goes, oh my God, this lyric is like prophetic. I said, that's the hallmark of a great fucking metal song, and you write something like, we wrote Holy Wars. Who knew, what all this shit that goes.
No, there's no way you didn't know that was a banger when you recorded that. You guys were really
Lockdown's the same thing, you know what I mean? And it's like, look, just what's going on, in LA.
Holy Wars is incredible. Holy Wars is arguably one of the greatest metal songs ever, like ever.
Well, and I think the thing of it is, when you write songs like that, topics are so universal. They're just timeless, because you're writing songs about people and the behavior of people, and while the times may change, people never do. You know what I mean? It's like these things just keep coming back around. And I think that's what's so cool about metal, is we write about topics like that can be daunting and scary, but it's just the behavior of human beings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So so it's
history repeats itself. That's why Holy Wars is still relevant. Sadly, it's crazy. I mean, it's relevant right now.
For sure. Yeah,
I mean, it's great. This world is crazy, man. You know that. So, well, I don't want to keep any more of your time, man. I appreciate you so much, man. Like always. Once again, follow everything that David is doing, and thank you, brother. We out of here, man.
Okay, buddy. Yo, rock and roll, brother.
Yeah, have a good one, bro. Thanks for your time.
Bye.